BioPhoenix here, and before we start the review, one thing I would like to say here is that this is the 100th episode of BioPhoenix Game Reviews, and all I have to say is that, how the fuck did I manage that? Now, technically, would be the 101st review, because I did do a review that was not in episode, it was Hong Kong 97, it was for a special day, and yeah, the review was pretty crappy anyway, but that's okay, I had fun with it. But anyway, so this is the official 100th review that I've done.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Yeah, I had to throw that one in there. But anyways, so I just want to say that we're going to be doing some reviews on some Evangelion games, and I only found one that was actually playable, and that happens to be the one on the Nintendo 64 called Neon Genesis Evangelion 64. Yeah, because all the other ones are all like released on Japanese only, including this one, that are for like the Sega Saturn, the PS1, PS2, and all that kind of stuff. But they're all types of games that, I can't really understand to play, like they're visual novels or puzzle games and mahjong and all that kind of shit. But this one is definitely playable outside, so anyways, let's begin the review. So Evangelion 64 was developed by Beck, and it was published by Bandai, and it was released in 1999 in Japan only. And for the most part, this game is a fighting game, but it also does have some other missions that happen to be a loose collection of mini-games that are Evangelion related. So I'll talk a little bit about each of them, but before we do that, I do want to go over a little bit about the story. So it follows the story of the anime pretty damn well, if I say so myself. So, it takes place in the year 2015 when Second Impact happens, and that makes everything all fucked up and shit. And for the most part, you are using Shinji Ikari, who happens to be the main character of the show. And yes, I've said it in my anime review before, and I'll repeat it here. He is a fucking crybaby. So I'm not gonna go super in detail about the story here, mostly because I've already talked about it in my anime review. So if you've seen the anime before, you've pretty much seen all the recognizable scenes within this game. So yes, if it comes to the story, if you like the story within Evangelion, then yes, you'll like the story here. But if you want to know my thoughts on it here, in case you haven't seen my review on it, I think it's a pretty decent show. Not amazing, but pretty decent. It's definitely not as good as I remember it being the first time I watched it. And I do find that the anime does have a lot of good moments within it. It's just I find that the middle part and the ending are just kind of boring. But for the most part, I do consider the show to be pretty good when it comes to its story. I just don't think it's like amazing good like a lot of people say it is. And I'm well aware I'm in the minority here, and that's totally fine, I'm used to it already. So now let's move on to the gameplay, but we're going to talk about the fighting parts first. So you're using Shinji, who is piloting the Unit 1, and it's a one-on-one fight against the angels that are attacking the city. So you gotta take him out, and sometimes it can be easier said than done, because the first time I was playing this, I was sucking pretty damn bad. So whenever you do a set number of attacks in a row, or if you do a grab attack or whatever, it'll play a little bit of a cutscene of you beating the shit out of the angel, or the angel beating the shit out of you. Now one thing I do find weird is that whenever you do take a certain amount of damage, it'll play a cutscene of you going into like berserk mode, and you'll do a hell of a lot more damage here than you did before, because normally your regular attacks do like shit damage. So I kinda get why they added this in here, is because it actually follows the show quite well, and I have to give them some credit on that. But it is just pretty frustrating knowing that you have to take a certain amount of damage before you can actually do like a big load of damage onto your opponent. So all the moves you can do in this game is that one button attacks. You can evade if you press the button at the right time. You can do a little bit of a charge forward. You can grab the enemy, and you can also do this little like shield thing where if the enemy gets a little bit too close, you can knock them back a little bit. So even though this game is all in Japanese, at least it is easy to understand, and I do have to give them credit here as well, is that at least when it does show you the map layout of the buttons to use, at least it actually just shows the button that you have to press. Now this is just a minor pet peeve of mine, is that I really don't like it when fighting games, whenever you see the button layout, it doesn't tell you the actual buttons, it just says like high punch, high kick, low kick, whatever the case is. And a part of the reason why I'm not a huge fan of that has to do with the fact that I play a lot of fighting games, and a lot of different fighting games. I guess you can say I like having variety here. So there's a lot of fighting games out there that play differently from each other. So just for an example, like sometimes like this fighting game would have like high punch to be square, or sometimes this fighting game would have like high punch to be X, and sometimes I just get really confused by that. But as I said, that's a minor thing, and thankfully this game actually does it the way that I like it. So after you're finished a fight or a minigame, you get the screen that looks like the ending credits, and that's where you can save your progress and continue on. So the first minigame that you play is on Mission 3, and that happens to be the one where you have to take out that giant ass diamond. And this part is so fucking hard that you wouldn't believe it. So all you gotta do is put the cursor on the aimer and then press A and Z, and big bang, you're fucking done. Yeah, doesn't that sound Ghosts and Goblins hard to you? Well, okay, to be serious, no, it's actually fucking easy as shit. It's funny, the first time I was playing this part, I had no idea what I was doing, and I ended up finishing it before I knew it. So the next part, you gotta stop a unit from heading towards a town, or else the town would be destroyed. But you don't stop it by fighting it, you gotta run right up to it, and you gotta drag it down so it doesn't blow up. So all you gotta do here is press A and down C over and over again, synchronized. So in a way, it kind of feels like playing world-class track meet on NES, but with Evangelion slapped all over it. So after you make it there, it plays a cutscene, and then after the cutscene, you gotta stop it by tapping the commands that it says. So the mission after that one is something that you probably wouldn't believe it, but you have to do the dancing part. So in other words, it's a rhythm game. So before you start the mission officially, you have two options. You can do the practice run as many times as you like, or you can do the mission for real. So in this rhythm game, you're only pressing the C buttons, and you gotta press the right ones when the commands are in the red zone. It's very simple stuff, and I don't really have any real complaints about it, although when you're doing the mission for real, it can be kind of annoying because you can get distracted easily because you want to look at the screen, but you can't. Because if you just make one mistake, it's game over for you. And speaking of game overs, whenever you do get one, at least there is unlimited continue, so you don't have to start all the way back at the beginning. So before we move on from the dancing part, all I have to say here is that this is probably the most fun I've had playing this game, I shit you not. Mainly because it's simple and doesn't feel slow as shit. But if I really wanted to get my quick fix on playing a rhythm game where you just tap a whole bunch of buttons without peripherals, I would just stick to Hatsune Miku because, well, those games are actually pretty fun, surprisingly. And yes, I know, I'm a complete whack job. And the next one after that is the one that I fucking hate the most. So it's the one part where you gotta use Asuka, who has to go into the fat unit, and it can go into the lava, and you gotta go catch an angel. And like I said, this part just pisses me off. Mainly because you gotta have super precision accuracy. Blah, that's a weird tongue tie. But to make matters worse has to be the fact that the controls here are very delayed, so yeah, good luck. But I'm not gonna waste any more time on this part because this part is just fucking irritating as shit. So the next mission after that, you gotta go into the units where you're controlling the three main characters and you gotta jump over the power lines. It's another fairly easy mission, mostly because the controls at this part are actually not delayed. And then after that you got some more fighting to do, like you get to fight another pilot and some more angels, and eventually I got stuck at a part where you gotta fight a giant angel, which just pissed me off and I got tired of it and said fuck it. So for the most part, the gameplay is kind of all over the place, but at least you do get some variety here. Even though the minigames are kinda lackluster. So now, let's move on to the controls, and I'm talking about the ones for the fighting parts. And while I did say they are pretty easy to understand considering this game has Japanese language, well unfortunately that's the best thing I can say about them because the controls kinda suck. So the movement is very slow and sluggish, and you may be thinking, well, hey, isn't that supposed to be realistic? So if we're going to be going to the realistic route, then yeah, sure, that works fine, but if we're trying to take a look at trying to adapt from Evangelion like the show, then you probably already know that the units in the show actually move pretty fast for a giant machine. Or should I say cyborgs in this case. I mean, not only are they very mobile, but they can also do backflips and shit. So anyways, the attacking and the grabbing and all that is very slow and sluggish, and it does take a lot of time to get used to. In fact, it actually took me quite some time to actually get this figured out. But even getting used to the controls, I still found that the attacking just really sucks. Although I did get the evading nailed down pretty good. So what I mostly try to do in the fighting parts is that I try to evade and then grab the enemy and do that over and over again, so there's no real intricate strategy here for a fighting game. But even if this was supposed to be some like Godzilla type thing, this still just isn't all that great. So when it comes to the controls for the fighting parts, they kinda blow. But at least the controls for most of the other parts of the game do work rather well, except for, you know, that one part with Asuka trying to capture the angel within the lava. Just fuck that part entirely. So now, let's move on to other things, like the graphics, and all I have to say here is that the graphics are pretty amazing for N64. So it has a lot of nice color schemes, and of course it does represent the anime very well. And they even play FMV in this game, which is actually quite a surprise since the N64 was not really known for doing that. I mean, the only other game on the N64 that had something like this would be Pokemon Puzzle League. So while those parts may not look like the greatest thing ever, for N64, it's actually quite impressive. So graphically, this game actually looks pretty awesome. Now, as for the game's music, as again, the music actually captures the show very well, and of course it sounds very good. And of course just the regular songs of themselves are just really good sounding. There's nothing really much I can complain about when it comes to music, so not only does it capture it well, but it also sounds really good. You know, it kinda seems like that the developers were more focused on the presentation rather than the overall gameplay. Well, whatever, we'll get into that in a moment. So if you want to buy this game, like I said, you have to import it from Japan, unless you just happen to know someone that is selling a copy of it around your area that has imported it before, obviously. But as for general prices, I have not seen a whole lot, but from the ones that I have seen for loose carts, you can get it for about $30. And as for complete in box, that usually goes about like $50 to $70, even $80 at times. So as of right now, it is kind of hard to narrow it down, but of course I wouldn't say that this game is like super common or that it's super rare. I would say it's more uncommon, especially for the fact that this game never came out over here, so it's not like you can find it at a local game store easily. But personally for me, when it comes to buying this game, I wouldn't pay $30 for a loose cart. So now, as for my overall thoughts on the game, I think this game kinda blows. Mostly for its gameplay, and as you already know, gameplay is more important. Now yes, it does adapt the show very well, which I think is a good thing, and it also does have some very nice graphics and music, which is also good, but if you have shitty gameplay, then, you know, that's not a good thing. And as I said before, the part that I had the most fun with within this game happened to be the rhythm game part, and even then, it was just kinda okay, I guess. So clearly, if you're not a fan of the show, or you don't even know what the show is, then yeah, you probably won't like this game at all. But if you are a fan of the show, then you might get some enjoyment with just seeing some of the recognizable scenes being played on your N64 or your emulator or whatever. So the only time I can recommend this game is if you happen to be a super hardcore fan of Evangelion. And as for me, I kinda like the show, it's just not my most favorite one ever, but it is pretty good for what it is for the most part. So even knowing all like the random shit that happens within Evangelion, I still don't really like this game all that much, but it is at least better than Superman 64 and Carmageddon 64, that's for damn sure. But it's still not all that great. Like I said, I think they focus way too much on the presentation than the overall gameplay. So with that being said, I can't really recommend it. And unfortunately, there's no other games I can actually play that are related to this series since, like I said at the beginning of the video, they're all like either puzzle games or visual novels, mahjong or pachinko or whatever the hell else they have. And they're also on systems that are kinda hard to emulate at times. But I know the one on PS2 is a fighting game, which does look interesting, but like I said, PS2 games on emulation are not always the greatest. Sure, some of them do work quite fine, especially if you have a good enough PC, but I find weirdly enough, a lot of the import games that happen to be on PS2 don't really work well on emulation, which kinda sucks. So maybe I should just go out and buy a Japanese PS2. I mean, I thought about doing that before, but anyways, so with that being said, that will be the end of the review for Evangelion 64, and well, I think it kinda sucks. At least as a game it sucks, but as for presentation wise, then yeah, it's actually pretty impressive. But I don't play games just to look at them, that's what I do for movies and anime. So anyways, let's end it here. So thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.